Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about 7 things I hate about Paris. I have been living in Paris non-stop for the past 4 years. I say non-stop because I had been in Paris in the past for a visit or for work, but it was never for a very long time. So yeah, I've been in Paris non-stop for 4 years. Also, I am French, but I grew up in the south of France. So, with no specific order, let's start with reason number 1. And it is the smelly and dirty metro. Yes, I have to say smelly and dirty at the same time. My main issue does not concern the metro itself, although a lot could be said about it as well, but I'm mostly talking about the subway corridors in Paris, which are cleaned. I don't know how often, but obviously it is not enough. There is way too much dirt on the corridors, and the smell in some areas of the corridors are very questionable, like pee smell, and obviously that is not normal to have a smell underground, and it feels very uncomfortable sometimes because of it. I've had that conversation a few times with some of my colleagues who are Parisians, who grew up in Paris and live in Paris, and very often they will tell me that, I had too much of an expectation about the metro because I have to remember that it is one of the oldest metro in the world, so the expectation couldn't be too high. My answer is always, if you are so old, that means that you also have a lot of experience, and with experience should come improvement. With all this experience, Paris subway should be the best in the world. But obviously that is not the case, and I don't think that is too much to ask to have a clean subway that doesn't smell like pee in some areas. Is it too much to ask? I don't think so. I've been in London multiple times. The metro is not perfect at all either, but you don't see that in London subway. And some people could argue that in London it is more expensive to use the subway. So if you pay more, you should have a better quality of services. But although we pay less in Paris, the company taxes in France are higher, and in Paris itself there are so many headquarters of French companies, so many rich companies here, so many big companies which pay a lot of taxes. So the money shouldn't be the reason. The city receives a lot of money from the companies. While watching this video, please leave me a comment to let me know where do you live and what are the few things that you hate about your city. The second thing I hate about Paris is again related to smell, and I'm talking about the smell of cigarettes. In France overall, there are still in 2021 way too many people who smoke. And I don't think Paris is the city where people smoke the most in France, but because everything is narrow and the city is overcrowded by people, it's almost like you smell cigarettes much more often in this city than in other cities, in my opinion. I will give you a simple example. In the morning, if you walk to get to your subway station, you won't be the only one walking to that subway station. You will be many people on a small sidewalk usually. And all the time, early in the morning, people will smoke their last cigarette before going into the subway. So imagine, it is maybe 8 a.m., you woke up super early, you took your shower, you put some perfume, you put your skincare, you feel fresh, you try to feel motivated to go to work, and on your way to work, you already have the smell of cigarettes in your face. So when you walk towards your subway station for 5 minutes, you have to slalom to avoid the smoke of cigarettes. This is the example number one. A second example would be when you want to go have dinner or have lunch with your friends, and if you go on a terrace, there are many terraces in Paris, but because the city is not that big and it is overcrowded, the terraces are very often overpacked. And in France, it is not forbidden to smoke in a terrace. So very often with my friends who do not smoke, we have to be inside if you want to avoid the smokers. So the smokers enjoy to be outside, and if you want to avoid the cigarettes, you have to go inside, which is very unfair. The third thing I hate about Paris is the weather. And I remember when I started to work in Paris, I was always complaining about the weather. And my Parisian colleagues used to tell me every single time, why are you complaining? It's not as worse as London. London is always used as a comparison from Parisian. And I was always surprised because I'm not from London, so why are you talking to me about London? I grew up in south of France, so compared to south of France, there is a big difference. In south of France, we do have winter, but it's not that cold, and it is sunny on most days, which is not the case in Paris. I remember the first few weeks I was in Paris, my mom used to call me on the weekend to ask me what I was doing in the city, and every weekend I was telling her, oh, ma'am, it's raining this weekend, so I'm not going anywhere. So I did that one weekend, a second weekend, a third weekend, and the fourth weekend, my mom told me, you are in Paris now. It's going to rain often. You cannot stop going outside because it's raining. Get a good umbrella, get good outfits for the rain, and go out. And that's what I did because that's how it is. Obviously, if you're coming from Scotland to Paris, you will enjoy the weather more, but I grew up in the south of France, and in south of France, in my hometown, when it's raining, even if it is a last minute, you just cancel. You say, okay, it's raining, let's do that in 2 days or next week, and it's normal. Like nobody will complain about it. Yeah, it's raining, why should we go out? Most of the time it's not raining, so we can postpone. But that's not the case here, so yeah, I'm not getting used to it, but I'm learning to live with it. The fourth thing I hate about Paris is the amount of homeless people in the city. And when I mean hate, of course, I'm not saying that I hate those people. Oh my God, they should find a place. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that I do not understand. Actually, I do understand because I understand politics and economics, but I get very upset that a rich country and a rich city like Paris can have so many homeless people. And when you talk to people about it, there are different type of responses. Some people feel like myself, and other people will tell that, well, this is because of the new wave of immigrants, or this is because those people prefer to stay outside, which is nuts. Like, can you have some empathy or just try? As I said, my issue is that for a rich country, it is not normal for me to have so many people sleeping outside and dying because of that. In France, if you have health issue and you go to the doctor or in the emergency, you will be taken care of, even if you don't have money. And I wish it was the same when it comes to have a place to sleep. Saying that doesn't mean that you will give a nice big apartment, but a place that is safe to sleep. And if you are homeless, I don't know how you can start to rebuild your life if you do not have a safe place to sleep. So it should be mandatory for me, especially when they have so many empty buildings in this city and empty buildings which are also owned by the government. So why do you have so many empty buildings when you can see that there are so many homeless people? This obviously is not just a Paris thing, it is something that you can see in many rich cities where the rent and the price of apartment is going crazy, like San Francisco, New York, London, Hong Kong. And to me, it is unacceptable. And I would be okay if the government tomorrow will tell me, okay, you will have to pay more taxes, but we guarantee you that nobody will sleep outside. I would say, okay, I don't think it is too much to ask to have a place that is safe to sleep at night. But it's not a conversation that you hear a lot on the media. In France, it seems that nobody really cares. So, yeah, if you come to Paris, you will notice that there are many homeless people, more than in other French cities, because the city is crazy expensive to live. The fifth thing I hate about Paris is the lack of nature. And I know what some of you would say, that is a price to pay when you want to live in a big city. And actually, that is not the case, because if you go to London, they have so many huge and beautiful parks in the city. If you go to Melbourne, Australia, it is the same thing. So some cities have been able to put some nature in the city. Obviously, Paris is an old city, so it's not like we can destroy buildings and put parks instead, but that is very annoying. There are a few parks in the city, but they are very spread out and you can walk for hours in Paris without coming across a park. And I'm not talking about the kid parks, which are ridiculously small. I'm talking about parks which are big enough where you can feel or pretend to feel like you are in nature. So that's one thing I don't like about the city. I love big cities, but I also love to feel like the nature is not far from the city. That's something that I've seen in Hong Kong, in London. That's something that I love about Miami. I saw that also in Melbourne, and I feel very good when I'm in a big city surrounded by nature. But that is not the case in Paris. If you want to see the nature, take your car or a train on the weekend and go somewhere else. The sixth thing I hate about Paris is the price of the apartments for what you get. And I'm talking about the rent, but I'm also talking about the price if you choose to buy an apartment in the city. And I will give you an example. I was looking for a place when I arrived in Paris 4 years ago, and I was looking for a one-bedroom apartment. I didn't have a time to visit all the place because looking for a place in Paris and working is another story. So my uncle helped me with that, and I created an Excel sheet for him, so he would just have to cross, the boxes while he was asking question to the agent and walking around the apartment. And in that list, I said important, the kitchen, because I love cooking, I have to cook, otherwise I feel depressed. And it should make sense that if you visit an apartment with one bedroom and one living room, that the kitchen should be a decent size. I mean, this is Paris, so when I say decent, I don't mean big, I just mean decent size. But there was this place my uncle visited, and it was not small. It has a nice size bedroom and a nice size living room, but the kitchen was ridiculously small. It was tiny, and he filmed the kitchen to show me. And I was looking at the video and told him, where is the fridge? Where do you put the fridge? There was no place in the kitchen to put the fridge, so you would have to put the fridge in the hallway or in the living room. And it did not make sense at all because the apartment was big enough, and I was wondering, but why didn't the landlord just remove the wall between the kitchen and the living room? Because it could have been removed, and then with a few equipment from IKEA, it could have just put a decent size kitchen in the apartment. But because in Paris people are on a list, a long list, when they visit apartments, it seems that many landlords just do not care. Even simple things that they could do to improve the quality of life of the renters, they don't want to do it. So very often the renters end up doing the job for the landlords, which is not normal. But they don't care because they will find someone for the place. So in the end, I ended up in a studio apartment, which was smaller, but the design of the apartment was actually making sense. And in this smaller studio, I had a decent sized kitchen. Actually, if you want to look at this studio, just check one of my previous video. I will leave the link somewhere. But that's the thing in Paris. You can find a big apartment with a tiny kitchen. You can find a small apartment with a huge hallway. The design of the apartments do not make sense, especially in the old apartments, unless you are ready to pay a good amount of price to get a decent looking apartments. That's just how it is. The seventh and last thing I hate about Paris is the fact that everything in France is centered in Paris. And you should think it is a good thing if you live in the city because that means you have access to everything. That is true, but that caused many issues, including many of the issues I have listed in this video. When I mean everything is centered around Paris, I mean everything. All the media are in Paris. All the economics, the finances are in Paris. Most of the headquarters from the huge French companies are in Paris. Some European headquarters from international brands and companies are in Paris. The government is in Paris. The theater, the music, the entertainment, everything is in Paris, which causes that if you work in those industries, you have to come to Paris. And that's the reason Paris is so crowded. It's not because it is a beautiful city, it is not because it is very touristic, it is because in France, many of us have to come to Paris just to work. And as I said, because of that, there is a huge list when you have to look for apartments, so the landlords don't make big efforts. Because of that, when you go to a terrace to eat your meal, the terrace is overcrowded. So if someone is smoking, you will definitely smell the smoke of cigarettes. It is also the reason why the metro is annoying. Not only does it smell bad and it is not clean, but also because it is so overcrowded during peak hours that it is annoying and people get stressed. So the fact that everything is centered in France, in Paris, creates many other issues. And I don't think it's going to change because the people who run this country are based in Paris. So it's almost like we don't realize that. Every day we complain about those things in Paris, not just me, but they are non-facts, but I don't see any improvement to make sure that France is not as much centralized. With the pandemic, people are working more and more remotely, and many people who were working in Paris realized how much they couldn't live in Paris anymore. But there are new and small changes. Is it going to change more? Honestly, I don't think so, because as I said, the people who run this country have Parisian mindset. They are based in Paris, and I don't think they want this to change. So, with that being said, you might be wondering, with all those things that you hate in Paris, why are you living in Paris? Then that's because of reason number 7, because of my work. Paris is a place I have to be, at least for now. If you enjoy this video, let me know. I can do a part 2 There are also a few things that I like about Paris, so if you are interested about that, I can do a video about that as well. I thank you a lot for watching this video and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye!